It has now been 10 years.
10 years of lives transformed.
10 years of lives saved from violence.
10 years of poverty turned into stability.
10 years of National Zakat Foundation.
In 2013, a group of Muslims in Australia embarked on a mission to ensure that Muslims in need were never left behind.
Ours was a community entirely reliant on the government to look after our problems.
Outside of social security, Muslims had no systematic way or infrastructure to look after their own.
To look after spouses and children abandoned or abused in harmful relationships.
To look after refugees or international students unable to receive any financial support in our country.
To look after Muslims on the streets because of cyclical poverty or the traumas of life.
And to support children with special needs and the desperate families and carers that struggle to support them.
Our vision at NZF was inspired by this gap and the Islamic obligation for us to look after our own, right here in Australia, powered by the blessing of Islam's third pillar.
And so was born a community institution that had a crystal clear vision. A confident, self-sufficient Australian Muslim community where no individual in need is ever left abandoned.
As we mark our 10 years in operation, we've distributed more than $14 million in Zakat locally to help change some 19,000 families.
And in the process, NZF has helped create an incredible infrastructure for the fulfillment of Islam's third pillar, right here in Australia.
A system that is now a movement, bringing together more and more leaders, organisations, partners and specialists to help create change where it's most needed in our community.
And every year, this movement gets stronger.
It is through this movement and its delivery of zakat that NZF is helping alleviate poverty, turning zakat recipients into zakat givers.
Whether they are refugees or victims of abuse or people left homeless.
We're immensely grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for His help and to our community for its generous and continuing support.
But for us, this is just the start. And as we look forward to the next 10 years, we'll continue to strive every day to build an independent, self-sufficient future for our community.
A future in which this great pillar of Islam achieves its objectives and no Muslim is left abandoned.
This is our community's future and you are invited.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Dear brothers and sisters, and welcome to another episode of Real Talk. I'm delighted to be back with you again 2 nights after we kicked back off for 2023, and really looking forward to tonight's episode, inshallah. Thank you very much for those of you who tuned in on Monday and gave us some great feedback behind the scenes. We've heard some great things about how people felt the episode looked at the community, its current status, its future status, and the role that zakat has to play. And in a similar vein, well, not a similar vein, but going to the heart of money and finance and so forth. So now we bring you a very interesting and juicy topic, inshallah, which has generated a lot of interest, a lot of good questions privately, and it is on the topic of Islamic finance and whether it's a sham. Now, it's a very bold question to be asking, but we wanted to, get the viewership, and what better way to do it than with a bit of clickbait. We're going to be looking at all things Islamic finance. I highly doubt we're going to get through everything today, almost impossible, and so we'll probably peg it for another episode in Ramadan, which is usually a time where we have a lot of activity on the show and address a lot of the burning and important questions in the community. Just a quick one to all our viewers who are watching. If you have not been keeping up to date with NZF's social media accounts, please do so. Follow their Facebook page, follow their Instagram page, where you receive some amazing information about the episodes to come. And of course, a lot of education, resources, tips about the important pillar of zakah, which a lot of us are going to fulfill in the month of Ramadan that's coming up. So if you're interested in doing the right thing by your finance and your finances and purifying your wealth, then follow NZF's channels and be on the lookout for great opportunities to give sadaqah to the work that NZF is doing, the fantastic work that they're doing in the community, which we will talk about in the coming month or so in earnest, inshallah. Without further ado, let's get into the topic for today, and we will do that by introducing our esteemed guests. I would like to say assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah to our brother Farhan and to Sheikh Yusuf Tang with his little introduction to the Muslim community. But formally, for those who are watching who may not be familiar with our guest today, must start with Sheikh Yusuf Tang. Sheikh Yusuf Tang is a long-standing and esteemed member of the Australian Muslim community. He is currently a board member at ICFAL, the Islamic Cooperative Finance of Australia Limited.
Yes.
Yes. Wonderful.
Sharia board member.
Sharia board member, mashallah. Sharia board member, advisor, and an Islamic finance professional. He, by background, used to work in the corporate sector before he made a segue into the world of Islamic knowledge. And he did that by graduating from the the Medina International University from Malaysia, where he did a bachelor's degree and a master's degree. And of course, in his previous life, he had a Bachelor of Commerce and an MBA, mashallah. So certainly one who knows his stuff when it comes to money. Sheikh Yusuf has given some amazing talks, lectures, generally, but also on the topic of Islamic finance, and the community has really benefited from his knowledge in that regard. Sheikh Yusuf, wonderful to have you. We'll come to your motivation for what you did in a moment, but I'd also like to welcome brother Farhan-ul-Haq Usmani. He joins us here in Australia. He's here auditing and making sure that everything that's happening at Iqbal is happening, properly. He's a Sharia auditor, and he's from the Mizan Bank of Pakistan, which is the largest Islamic financial institution or Islamic bank in Pakistan anyway, and one of the largest in the world. And by background, he is an Islamic finance professional, very well qualified in the area with multiple degrees and so forth, and sits on the board of various institutions that work in this particular space. So we've got two very, very qualified gentlemen here with us today, and it's an absolute pleasure for me to be welcoming them here today. I am going to ask the difficult questions, which is going to be a lot of fun, but in an atmosphere of brotherhood, inshallah, and critical inquiry into one of the great ni'am that Allah has given us, which is money, finance, and making sure that we do the right thing in that area is really, really an important thing. So, Sheikh Yusuf, let me start with you, right? Just going to the discussion that we were having before. So you were a corporate guy by background,
yes,
and then some questions started going off. Tell us a little bit about that.
Look, it's interesting. I was just like the average Joe. I had.
His name's Joe, by the way.
It's Joe, that's right. So I was the average Joe. I had all these questions about, I'm like everyone else, that's potentially listening. You have all these questions about not just Islamic finance, about the deen in general. And I was just saying to Faraz, there's only a certain amount of times you can call a sheikh or someone knowledgeable before you start feeling shy and embarrassed. You're taking too much of their time. So really that was the catalyst for the next step in, okay, you want to study the Sharia, you want to learn the deen, what do? You need to study Arabic. Okay, you're going to learn the Arabic. So after the Arabic, then you go on to the next step and so forth, until you realize, oh, hey, God, hold on, it's actually quite interesting. And that curiosity that's kept on, coming back, and to satisfy that curiosity, you actually need to study the religion in a coordinated, structured manner to give you that background to then, research so many wonderful topics. And funny enough, just because I was studying commerce and MBA, you just end up being pigeonholed in this field. So, alhamdulillah, that's where I end up. And I don't like to refer to myself as an expert, rather just as one of the brothers that's just as curious as everyone else and have the same burning questions. Yeah.
Brother Farhan, what about your background? Tell us about how you got into this area.
Well, previously I was an ERP consultant and a tax and auditing consultant. It's a long story, but somehow I realized that, this is not just the end of the world, and that's not the reason why we are here. And as we say that Islam is a way of life, it's not just a religion. So that made me think that, if it's a way of life, how is it possible that, a way of life can be, dealt with or spent without the understanding or indulgement into financial areas? Because usually since childhood, we've heard about, the banking and the insurance sector is this non-halal, conventional, and, that's how I was being taught at my family that, these are not the sectors to go. So being a student of business and economics, I was wondering, that probably if you're a practicing Muslim, it would be, if not impossible, it would be very difficult for you to manage your finances in a Sharia compliant manner. So honestly speaking, it was maybe a result of a dua. رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make a way whereby, I was granted a national level scholarship from the government of Pakistan for higher studies Then subsequently I met with the Sheikh like Sheikh Usmani, Sheikh Taqi Usmani, and they guided me, they helped me out in understanding the subject. So alhamdulillah, subsequently I got offer from, at that point it was the initial stages of Mizan Bank way back some 18-19 years ago, and they were establishing a function of research and product development there.
Right.
They offered me a position there, so alhamdulillah I joined Mizan. Since then alhamdulillah I've been associated with Mizan Bank, currently working as executive vice president and head of Sharia audit at Mizan Bank,
Very
Pakistan.
good, mashallah. Well, I look forward to asking some tough questions of the Islamic finance sector, inshallah, both of you. So let me start with, what is Islamic finance? Like, how would we define Islamic finance? Sheikh, how would you wrap it
up? Look, I'll take a more sort of a fiqhi approach.
Yes.
When you really think about, what is Islam? Islamically, religiously, Islam is Islam. You kind of submit. Religiously, it sort of means you're submitting to the commandments of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, right? And then specifically, it means the 5 arkan, the pillars of Islam and so forth. But taking that into account, Islam is a form of submission, obedience towards Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. And if you add that with finance, it's interesting because in Arabic, the word is mawwala yumawwilu tamwil, tamwil al-Islami, that's Islamic finance in Arabic. And mawwala means mal means money. Mawwala is kind of to finance the money, right? So you're financing, you're giving money, you're sort of financing in a way that is submitting and pleasing towards Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. So that's the definition that I like, but I'm sure, mashallah, Brother Farhan also has his own beautiful definitions of the topic as well.
MashaAllah, you have created a great pace, MashaAllah. So, just to add, it's about managing your financial affairs in a Sharia compliant manner. That's it. It does include, making financing arrangements. It's the way you deal in money. It's the way you make your investments. It's the way you pay your obligations, which are, including zakat, charities, and everything. So it does include an Islamic financial world, and it's, rather a bigger term could be the Islamic economic matters. So Islamic economy, or Islamic economics, or Islamic finance, it all includes everything related to money and finance in Islam.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. Now, in a lot of people's minds, when you think of Islamic finance, you think of home-related matters, right? So the financing of the home, and I think that's where we'll focus a bit of our attention, because that's where a lot of the confusion or contention exists, right? In terms of the different ways of financing a home and the weird and wonderful questions that it all leads to. And we'll get to that at some point. So, I just want to sort of foreground that's where a lot of the interest naturally is in this topic, especially at the current time with the cost of living pressures and so forth that everyone is facing. So we will dive into that. But before we do that, let's talk a little bit about the Islamic perspective towards money and wealth itself, right? And in your view, and in light, I guess, of our aqidah as Muslims, and the hereafter-centered view that we have, the akhirah-centered view, tell us about how you as Muslims view the concept of money, the concept of wealth, the concept of finance. Is it something to be shunned? Is it something to be accumulated? Is it something to be seen neutrally? How this massive sort of question? How would you answer that, Sheikh Yusuf?
Look, I think Islam, when we speak about Islam and its relationship with wealth, Islam embraces that in a way that, if you really think about it, Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala knows that He created us as human beings. He knows that we love wealth, and it comes with various, ayat of the Quran and Sunnah of Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. The son of Adam love wealth. So Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala has naturally created all these laws and regulations and guidance of how for us to manage our wealth as Muslims, right? I do realize that sometimes the rhetoric is, you got to be a good believer, forget about money. But then if you preach too much of that, then we end up in a stage where in the community where, okay, you don't have financial infrastructure in place, you don't have all these financial products in case you have you spending $2,000, $3,000 on iPhones and iPads and all these kind of I. But then you need to start to bring it back. There's a beautiful fiqh rule, when something becomes sort of constricted, you need to sort of expand it a bit. right? So there's all this rhetoric about, shunning money, all this stuff. But hold on, at the same time, Islam came. If you look at Surah Al-Baqarah, the longest surah in the Quran, what is the longest ayah in the Quran? What is it about? It's about debt. It's about money. How do you manage and deal with money? Zakat, beautiful. One of the pillars of Islam is about purifying our wealth. If you look at how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses wealth in the Quran, when we spend it, He's very general, right? But when He addresses it, how money should be divided in inheritance, in zakat, it's very strict, it's precise. Why? Because we're going to argue about money all the time. I want more money. So the deen encompasses and understands all that. And I'll leave it as the last point here. If you study fiqh in detail, the sharia, you open the books, okay, chapter of prayer, chapter of zakat, chapter of fasting, chapter of hajj, you flip the chapter, and like we said before, there's two topics which everyone's interested in. It's either about marriage and divorce or fiqh and mu'amalat, Islamic finance, and they're like really thick. If you have books, they're really thick chapters, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows we love money, but He's guiding us to that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the scholars then gave us all these rules and defined us how do we manage our money. So it's actually an integral part of being Muslim, and I hope that throughout the program we can emphasize just some of these beautiful aspects of it. So Islam encompasses it, it embraces entrepreneurship, but it guides us of these borders that we need to operate in. All right, that's sort of the relationship that I feel when I try to preach to people. Islam.
Brother Farhan, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I believe. As far as money is concerned, it's a tool. It's not an end in itself. It's means to an end. And what's the end is just to seek pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's it. So it's a tool which cannot be avoided by anybody in the society while you are being here. But it's not the end in itself, which means when you have it, we have examples of Sahabas. Hazrat Usmani radiallahu ta'ala anhu was there. He was a wealthy, rich businessman. Hazrat Abdurrahman bin Auf radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he was. So we have examples. Had it been a curse, then those Sahabas wouldn't have that money, or wouldn't have. But the way they have spent this money, that's an example for us to take. So which means that this is a tool to seek refuge, seek pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by utilizing this tool to get success in the hereafter as well.
Yeah, absolutely. How, and I guess this has been an interesting one. Before we dive into sort of like Islamic finance per se, how's that different to the worldview that prevails today in the wider world? And you can see where I'm sort of going with this, right? In terms of like when the world is operating a certain way. But Sheikh Yusuf, Islam has that view towards money, but the world we're living in has a very different view towards money, wouldn't you say?
Look, I think I want to take a step back, right, and put it into context. When you think about, I get what you're getting at, right? That's a really beautiful, important point, right? We're living in a capitalistic society. The world's about money, okay? And we need to. What's Islam's relation to? What does Islam fit towards that? I want to bring it back to the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad, right? There was a time where he was weak and oppressed, and there was a time where he established the Islamic State. Everywhere in between is examples for us to follow at specific times of the age life cycle of the community. Right? And Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, we sent Islam for the mercy of mankind. So if Islam can be applicable today as it was 1,400 years ago. It's applicable in a small village in some developing country. It's as applicable in this as we are in the center of Sydney, right? So Islam actually has the breadth to deal with all these issues and problems and to interact with other thought structures and societies, right? But it's the Muslims that are thinking that Islam doesn't have the, you can't fit Islam into, they can't, they start to think there's an actual, how does Islam fit into this? But Islam, it's so broad and there's so many things in Islam. It's like a really big round circle to operate in that you can fit and find specific ways that you can practice your Islam at different life cycles. That's why the scholar said, Andalus is a really beautiful example to read about, because you see the entire life cycle of the Muslims from the beginning to end. So when you read that history, you start to appreciate more. You start to take a step back that we're not just Muslims. Islam is not about a Muslim living in Sydney. That's not Islam. Islam is about, you know, the man or the family or the woman living in a really small town, it's an outback area that has no running water, electricity. As much as Islam is in the center of Sydney, we have the luxury of all these resources. Islam applies to all that. So Islam is can very comfortably cater for that and fit into all that, right? And I think it's a mistake to say, look, there's actually a clash, but it's more about, okay, let's bring it to the next level of curiosity, right? How do we do this? You know, let's do the root cause tree. Okay, there's a problem, or the why tree, right? Bang, 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 bang. Let's get to the next step. Right? Go down to that level, not just beyond the coffee chats about.
Yeah. Well, I mean that's exactly, and that's where I was sort of going with this, which is then the issue of trying to make Islamic finance work, and we were discussing this before, which I'm sure it's gonna come out now, right? In a world that is built on a very different worldview, does it have inherent limitations, inherent problems? And actually, for the benefit of our viewers, one thing that we were talking about is, Brother Farhan, I might pull you in here, is that I mean, tell us about that Islam and its view on economics generally is more than just on the narrow issue of banking. That's just one element of it. Talk to us about that a little bit.
Well, brother, alhamdulillah, when we go deeply into the teachings of Islam about the finance, economics, then we came to know that even none of the economists have such a detailed plan or solution to the economic challenges even being faced today that Islam has to offer. For instance, when you talk about starting from the lowest segment of the society, consider a person, a beggar. He economically he's from the lowest segment of the society. Even our deen, it has guidelines related to when can a person ask for a charity or something. The detailed system of the zakat, who is eligible to accept zakat and who is supposed to give zakat. The biggest challenge of the economy as of today is about circulation of wealth. The challenge is that even the capitalists who are supporting capitalism, they are of the view that capitalism is still looking for the solution of concentration of wealth. On the other hand, it comes to after the system of zakat and ushr, our deen has a solution and recommendation for the charity, sadaqat. And sadaqat doesn't mean only giving it to the poor. The money that you spend towards your family is also liked and recommended by the deen. Subsequently, when it comes to distribution or circulation of wealth, there is a hadith Qudsi suggesting that Rasulullah said that Allah says that when two persons enter into a partnership with good intentions, I am the third partner. That is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that, which means that he is recommending the partnerships, collaborations, which are being practiced, suggested by modern day businesses in order to promote business. Now, from an individual's perspective to even businesses, corporates and governments, there is a whole mechanism being developed and advised and taught to us by Deen Islam. So we have complete solution to it. As far as the modern world is concerned, unfortunately we Muslims are to be blamed for this. We think that our religion is unfortunately limited to just the aqaid and the ibadat, and that is it. And maybe if somebody wants to take another extra step, it would come to ikhlaqiyat, the manners. But muamalat and financial muamalat, they forms the basis of our religion. So from that perspective, I feel that being a Muslim, whenever we talk about certain countries, for instance, when we talk about Germany, let's say, why is it that it comes to our mind that one of the best produced machines in the world? When we talk about the Swiss, maybe best watches being produced in Switzerland. Whenever we talk about maybe Belgium, then the Belgian chocolates or something. Why is that? Why isn't that whenever a Muslims come to our mind, we say, okay, when he's a Muslim or she is a Muslim, their muamalat will be of, utmost purity. We should be like that. The way of Sahabas and Prophet ﷺ was. So this is what our religion has, the teaching that we receive from our ancestors is to be very, very clear in our muamalat. So this is a solution that is being given to us but for that we need to understand, we don't take it as a subject. We feel that, by birth, if I'm a Muslim, I do understand each and everything related to Islam. And, each one of us consider ourselves as a mufti to even issue a fatwa if I'm a born Muslim. Unfortunately, that's what the case is. But we have to learn about this subject. Because, nobody can say that, I have got nothing to do with Islamic finance. Nobody. It is everybody's matter. Just like ibadat and aqaid, which is the fard ain, not fard kifaya. Same is the case with the matters related to your muamalat and financial muamalat, because nobody can say that I have no financial matters to deal with. So which means we have to understand, and the Islamic economic and financial system caters to every segment of the society, including the governments. They have the solution. I mean, as far as modern day poverty, consumption challenges, every other challenge, it has been already addressed in the Islamic economic system.
Yeah.
Can I speak more?
Yeah.
Add to that, if I may. I think one of the key points, I want to be sure to address that's because that's a really good point. I hear that a lot where, it's a capitalistic society, it's a system based on riba. How can Islam fit into that?
Yeah, right. And that's getting to the essence.
And we're getting, so we can either speak about it now or
no, please. No, exactly what I was getting.
To do that, right? Okay. That's why I ended on like, it has to go beyond the coffee chats and all that stuff, because I hear that. That's what drove me to do what I'm doing now. I was as interested as all the brothers and sisters out there. I felt the same. Like, how do you do this properly? I don't want to hear halal meat, haram meat example, please.
Yeah.
Like you go to there, or I don't want to see a certificate, please. I want to go and do a proper root cause analysis. I want to push the boundaries of the laws to see where an Islamic finance organization can go. In this context of specifically Australian laws and regulations, which are built on interest-based system, the national credit laws, all these organizations, they're built to regulate a system based on riba, right? How does Islamic organizations fit that? It comes by building independence, right? So from my work in the industry in the last 10 years and really working with some of the top lawyers out there, organizations out there, yes, there are ways. I mean, it's probably a discussion for another time, and there's probably a bit of IP involved as well that I can't discuss. But look, there are ways that you can, and that's why I started off with the context of that. Look, Islam is really broad, not because I want to dodge the question. It's because it is broad enough that you can find ways to push the boundaries and create, but you need to create independence of the financial structures within the Muslim community. As long as your funds are tied with banks, it's always going to run according to who has the money. If I had money for us, I tell you what to do. You do whatever I want with my money if we have an understanding, right? But it starts when one day you're the billionaire and I'm the guy for a buck or two. You get to call the shots, bro. You get to call the shots. But to get to 1 billion, how do you do that? It goes beyond. You can't just have a coffee, talk about it. Assalamu alaikum, I'm going to go back to work tomorrow, brother. It doesn't work like that, I think Ismail Davis, Abu Ustad, when we have that conversation about stepping up, man, you got to step up, and it's not going to be perfect, right? But you need to find ways, and there are ways to create an independent system,
Islamic finance system.
And by doing that, when you control your own money, then you get to control the clauses in your contract. You get to control how you deal with the customers, and it's like, okay, now we're playing ball. Now we're balling.
So in a nutshell, I guess what you're saying is recognizing that there is an overarching capitalist system which is built on non-Islamic financial principles. Nonetheless, if we have our own sources of money and if we have enough independent money, then we can create products, we can create an Islamic ecosystem from a finance perspective.
It's beyond not just the money, motivated brothers and sisters like yourselves, really smart ones that are willing to step up to the plate, that are willing to turn away from a mashallah 200, 300k salary and work for themselves. I mean, we need those sort of human resources and that zeal and dedication from the next generation to bring it to the next level. And subhanallah, you can see it. There's so much I see it for myself. There's so much funds and potential in the Muslim community. They just need to see some hope. They need to see something that they can question and not get a certificate smacked in their face in return.
Right. Yeah.
They want to get the detail.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, how does this actually work?
How does it actually work? You know, so really addressing this. It's no longer the youth. The youth don't want to hear that. It's the next generation. They're curious.
Yeah.
They don't care if you're 40 or 50 years old. They're going to ask you all that. So it's sort of building that in independence in. But you summarize that well for us.
Yeah. So in a nutshell, your view is that it is possible, and we have to push the boundaries while obviously adhering to the fundamentals of the deen.
Yeah. At the fundamentals of our playing field.
Yeah. Right, now, on that playing field, that's where some of the questions might get raised, right? That because of the nature of let's bring in legal examples, right? That let's say you've got good intentions, you pool a bunch of money, let's say from Muslims, right? From wealthy, well-to-do Muslims in the community, you create a pool, cooperative or whatever you want to call it, and you want that to be able to finance the objectives of the Muslim community, right? Whether that be home ownership, whether that be institutions that need money to be able to borrow and build masajid or whatever. That could be the genesis or the start of some sort of ecosystem. But in order for you to be building contracts in this country, there are certain things those contracts have to fulfill. In order to pass money between banks that attached to each of the entities on both sides of a transaction, there are certain laws that apply. And by virtue of those, and by virtue of the fact that you will have to have some sort of credit license or finance services license, or whatever the case may be, you are now bound to the system and how it operates. That's what some people would say, right? And that's going to shackle you in terms of the forms of transactions, forms of partnership, or whatever, forms of structures, let's say, that are possible for different transactions, right? What would your response be to that? And let's take it as a given. Is it just, look, we take it as a given, we do the best we can?
I disagree. Like, all those laws, if you really think about it, okay, one of the key laws, and you know, the viewers can look that up, it's called the National Consumer Credit Protection Laws.
Yeah.
Right? That is more about consumer protection, you know. And then there are other laws in place, but like the thing is, yes, you can still effectively operate within those boundaries and structure your contracts in a way where you're modeling the spirit of Islam, you know, the financial returns of Islam. You can build all that in. I mean, the easy way out is, okay, you know, I'm just going to take an amortization schedule and make out, but you know, you can do it differently. You can customize globally, internationally well-recognized CRMs and stuff, and build your own platforms on top. That's what I tell everyone. Like, what we do is, I don't want to push as if, you know, I'm just giving a personal example, right? You take this international CRM, and then you modify it and you build all this stuff on top for yourself that is very different to the existing way and how existing way it's operating. So I always speak to my friends and colleagues. You're not bounded. You're only bounded when
the money is tied.
The money is tied, bro. Whether it's with government or anything, you're always tied. When someone gives you money, that's it.
Yeah.
You know.
So your hypothesis really, or your thesis,
bro, it's happening.
Yeah. Is that if the source of money is not tied to an institution such as a bank or a big bank, then you do have the chance to create transactions that are genuinely Islamic.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Well, good. Well, we'll dive into that, inshallah. Especially when we're talking about home ownership, right? Yes. And sources of funding and why interest rates and so forth fluctuate and all the rest of it. But before we go down that path, and it's good to know your thoughts on that, but Brother Farhan, what about you? Would you answer in the same way? Would you say an Islamically valid mode of financial contracts and transactions is possible, even in a world that is not built on an Islamic economic system?
Just to reply to your question, we have, let's take an example of where you said that, you know, non-Muslim countries whereby they have, I mean, just to give you an example of UK and France, whereby the widely used housing finance product, which is being practiced in various countries, is called diminishing musharaka, which is musharaka mutanaqisa. It requires the unit purchase of the asset by the customer from the financial institution that has initially financed. So it's sort of a, you know, if in a country whereby buying and selling of a property or its units is subject to taxation, that transaction is liable for double taxation. Technically, once you're financing this transaction and subsequently whenever the client purchases this transaction, he has to pay double tax. Now, these European countries are the initial countries of the world when this mechanism was, being taught to them. They amended their taxation system for these kind of transaction, and they were the first one to adapt to these kind of transactions, whereby in a market competitive manner these transactions can be executed by Islamic financial institutions in a Sharia compliant manner. So actually it is a self-imposed embargo on our Muslims that we feel that within the system, unfortunately, we are unable to, these are not holy commandments, these are the man-made laws actually. So whereby whenever we can justify the reasons for suggesting those amendments, they're just, it's a win-win thing. The contract is a win-win thing for the financial institution as well as the client as well as the investors. Then of course the government has got, they don't have any problem. The legislation don't have any problems. So usually my experience is we need to create awareness, not among our community, but to all the stakeholders. That includes legislators as well. Because this is not just Islamic finance, this is ethical finance as well. And once you explain to them this aspect of this kind of financing, of course a general person sitting at any whatever position, at a responsible position, tend to agree with you and they tend to support you. So I believe that whenever you explain or share this concept of Islamic finance with others, the details of the product, as it's based on just and equitable system, it is being supported by the legislature around the globe.
Well, fair enough. Yep. Let's change tack a little bit and go into what I think a lot of people would be interested for us to address. And we've only got, I told you it would go very fast. We've only got 22 minutes left. So I want to really dive into this. And maybe we will say to our viewers that, there will be a second episode and we will come back and we'll dive into this issue. But let's talk about home ownership. And I want short, sharp answers to some of these questions now. Sure. Should home ownership, Brother Sheikh Huzan, I'm only going to ask you this because you're from Australia. Should home ownership be a goal for Muslims in this country?
Should it be a goal? No. It shouldn't be your absolute goal. But if, home ownership, I know you want to sharpen sharp for us, but it's not going to happen.
And you can take it back to the
you got to set the because of all these things. It's always like that, right? You need to step back and set the context. Okay.
Yeah.
Brothers and sisters in Sydney are complaining that home ownership is expensive, but homes aren't as expensive in Brisbane or Adelaide or Perth. It's because we have this desire. We want to have our cake and eat it too. If you really want home ownership, if that's your priority, then okay, move somewhere, move to a country town, get a house, get a land, have a farm. Beautiful, right? It's all these, there's all these layers to that question where it's like, forget it, it's too hard, it's too expensive to buy a home, I'm just going to rent, right? But yeah, that's fine as well. I'm not sort of criticizing that. That's perfectly fine as well. But home ownership isn't a goal. But if you really want a home and that's your priority, then you should prioritize your life to do that within your means. Right?
People want a home. They want it in the suburb they've been born in. They want it now. They don't want to pay dead money, rent money, right? So they want everything.
And if you want that, you want a house in Bankstown, okay, pay 1.5 million.
Yeah.
All right. But if you want, like some beautiful brothers, they move to Young, beautiful farm down there, a few $100,000. You get a farm, you have a house over your head, you own it. Yeah. You have horses, mashallah, and own a little hobby farm. So it's that's the challenge I put to people. It's not it's not really about home ownership. But it's because
it's about having an ideal life almost.
Anyway.
And so it really goes back to what sort of life do we want? Is that the more fundamental question that people have to answer first?
That's correct.
What are they here to do on this dunya?
What do you want? What are your goals and plans in Sydney? What do you want for yourself? What do you want for your family? If home ownership fits in that, and if you find a way to finance your home, go ahead. But it's not a be on end all. And also at the same time, the classical scholars actually speak about the importance of. If you read a typical fiqh book about what to do with the wealth of an orphan, Imam Nawawi, mashallah, writes just in a simple chapter of how do you spend the wealth of an orphan. It's one of the things he writes is get for him a property. Right? A classical scholar writes these things because they understand. Look, property is important in certain ways because it provides certain security and all that sort of thing. But at the same time, it's not. It's you know, it's a whole argument about, you know, it's the means to the end, right?
Yeah.
And it's also, you're perfectly spot on. It's about, let's evaluate your lifestyle. What do you really want? Is that what your financial goals? Does that fit into Islam?
Yeah.
And Islam is, you know, is broad enough to carry that. But sorry, it's not short and
that's
sharp.
fair, because it's a complicated issue.
Yeah, that's right. You got to take a step in relay of what do you really want. But if you're going to ask me dead set, is home ownership, you know, well, no, it's not. Right, short answer.
Yeah. So let's talk about that famous fatwa in 1999, right? In the for Muslims living in the West, right, which basically said that the first home, even on conventional finance, right, a bank interest-bearing loan from a bank is permissible. What was the thinking behind it? And I'm not asking you whether you agree or disagree with the fatwa, but there was a certain logic to that, right? And because that argument, that fatwa gets used widely, because it was issued by one of the great scholars of the last century, Sheikh Yusuf, may Allah have mercy on him, passed away recently. Whatever one thinks of his views and so forth, there's no getting away from the fact that he was hugely qualified and a real leader when it comes to Islamic scholarship, right? He had his reasons for that, and a lot of lay Muslims would be like, Sheikh Yusuf Qaradawi said it, right? There was this massive fatwa. Here we go. I'm good to buy a home, right? What was the logic behind that, and how do we view famous fatwa or incidents like that, which have always become like pulp fiction in the Muslim community, right?
Yeah, that's, you know, it's interesting because a lot of people actually quote the fatwa and they have no idea where it came from. They're like, I can buy my first house. There's a fatwa on that. And then we actually tell them, hey, do you know actually the fatwa was given in 1989? Do you know what the first thing they say in that fatwa, in the resolution, is actually riba is haram? You know, Muslims should actually, so there's actual, you know, a lead up to the actual fatwa. There's, first of all, riba is haram. Second of all, the Muslims should do, should exert all their efforts to create financial independence and offer their own products. If that's not all possible, you should then approach the banks and see whether a conventional bank can offer an Islamic finance product. If that is not possible, then under the rule of, you know, necessity, makes permissible the prohibited, using that rule, then, you know, given the need of the Muslims to have a house over their heads and, you know, particular suburb and to remain amongst the community, that is permissible. You can get the first house, assuming that you don't have wealth to buy a house. So, for example, meaning if you have $500,000, you can buy a $500,000 house. You don't have to go and start, mashallah, take a $3 million mortgage.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It assumes that you should buy a house that has to be a first house. You don't have anything else. So there's all these criteria that are put. It's not just go to the bank and take whatever you want, right? Yeah. And you know, I guess we're not here to analyze that fatwa. I always like to bring it to the table and let's discuss it. And there's so much detail, fiqh behind it. There's this, they take from the Hanafi opinions, they take from this opinion and that opinion. So all that, there's a lot of backing to that fatwa. But that's all based on the fact that there was no alternative. Right. So you fast forward 10, 15 years later, mashallah, you know, Mizan Bank was established in how many years ago? Like
2002 we got to
2002, right? Okay. 1989 the fatwa. 2002. We're like how many years down the track now? This, mashallah, alternatives. Yeah, there's alternatives there now. So there was this, actually, it's not just the fatwa itself, there's so much detail behind the fatwa. And the scholars and that resolution, he actually gives you a manual of how to use the fatwa. It's not just yalla bismillah, you should do this and this and this and this, but riba, number 1, is haram. Number 2, you should establish your own financial systems. Number 3 and 4 and 5 and first. And then it's based on these rules, and these rules have this, what the scholars say. So it's actually very detailed, right? So on one hand, it's actually a very well researched, it's actually a very interesting academic research to read. So, you know, to that fatwa's defense, to Sheikh Qaradawi's defense as well, you can't just openly then say such and such has no, they don't know what it's talking about, you know. So all these fatwas, they have basis, they have usul, they have basis towards them. A scholar does not just come out and make those opinions, but just generally about that fatwa, it really draws home again the importance of Muslims needing to build their own ecosystem, being independent financially. And I think Brother Farhan I like his beautiful story about how, you tell me when you started at Mizan, it was small, and now, mashallah.
Yeah, alhamdulillah.
Like, share that story.
I would love to.
Yeah.
Brother, actually, my take on this point is, that fatwa was issued in 1999. Since then, the world has changed drastically. Now, to be honest with you, maybe let's leave it to the scholars to discuss about that fatwa, the basis of that fatwa, and the situation right now in the world where we are living right now. We should focus more on the current circumstances. They have changed economically, financially, even the ecosystem have changed. So now what we have to do is we should, as a practicing Muslim, we should be in contact or try to follow the guidelines of the modern day scholars who have understanding of Islamic finance. The subject, like we visit the doctors. If we have an issue in the eye, we go and visit the ophthalmologist rather than going to the world-renowned cardiologist. Same is the case with the religious scholars. Every sheikh has got a specialization in certain areas. Not every other sheikh is a specialist of Islamic finance or muamalat, right? So from that perspective, my suggestion to our brothers is that, of course, each and every scholar is respectable for every one of us. Having said this, whenever you intend to take an opinion regarding financial matters, you need to visit and follow that scholar who has got a specialization in the area of muamalat and fiqh al-muamalat. Secondly, as far as how Mizan has evolved over the year, in the year 1997, Mizan Bank started its operation as an Islamic investment bank. And in the year 2002, we were granted Pakistan's first dedicated Islamic commercial banking license. And immediately after that, Mizan acquired a French bank, SocGen, Société Générale Bank, and we converted whole of its operations into Islamic. Subsequently, with the organic growth and with the way Mizan has grown, alhamdulillah, during this period till now, we got to acquire two other multinational banks. One is HSBC Pakistan and HSBC Oman's Pakistan operation. So technically, Mizan, I believe is the only Islamic bank in the world that has acquired 3 conventional banks and have converted all of their operations into Islamic. And we, in collaboration with the regulators, because prior to that, they didn't have any Islamic banking or formal divisions or department or legislations, but we have worked together to form this system whereby new entrants made it into the market. And now recently, Pakistan, one of a relatively larger size bank like Faisal Bank, having more than 700 branches across Pakistan, they converted themselves from a conventional bank to a fully Islamic bank. This is the impact that, alhamdulillah, institutions like Mizan Bank has created in an economy, whereby people tend to say that, as this is a risk-sharing based model, maybe we'll end up losing our money. And, we might not get good results out of, or we might have to bear the cost of being Muslim. So from that perspective, alhamdulillah, the way Mizan has grown. Now, from being, in the year 2002, being the smallest bank in the country, having 30 plus banks across the country. Now, within Pakistan's perspective, if I may say, recently, a couple of weeks ago, our financial results of the major banks were announced for the whole year of 2022. Mizan becomes the #1 profitable bank in Pakistan. #1 highest market capitalization bank in Pakistan, alhamdulillah. Among the top 3 in terms of ROEs, and as far as branch network is concerned, in every aspect, alhamdulillah, we are in the top 5 league.
So what does that show in your view? What does that show?
That shows that, when you go, the Islamic finance is a viable option, not just from customers' perspective, but from a financial institution's perspective, because the demand is there, and we don't have just the Muslim customers. We have many non-Muslim customers even within Pakistan, and the reason for that is that, unfortunately, whenever we go to the bank and we open an account, we don't tend to, not anywhere in the world, we tend to, read the whole terms and conditions of the account opening form and everything. We just sign it and I agree and I agree and I agree. But whenever somebody compares it, being part of academia, I got these kind of assignment given to my students to compare this, just the account opening forms and various other contracts of conventional with Islamic. They tend to come up with various differences whereby there are just conditions whereby a balance is being created, because this is the beauty of Islam. Inherent beauty, that taking care of the rights of both the parties, not just one party. So because of these kind of protection that the consumer can get out of dealing with the financial institution, big corporates, alhamdulillah, they tend to come to Islamic financial institutions, not just because of beliefs, because they are non-Muslims, but despite that. And as far as being non-believers or non-Muslims are concerned, I'm happy to you must because in the platform that we are sharing right now is that might have an outreach to non-Muslims as well. Riba is prohibited not just in Islam; it is prohibited in Judaism, Christianity as well, all the Abrahamic religions. So all those people who are, who follow the guidelines of their religion, even in Hinduism, it is forbidden to take riba or give riba. So alhamdulillah, it's a viable alternate and option.
And shows the
growth. Alhamdulillah, that is the reason why even many conventional banks in Pakistan, having history of many years, they are now planning to convert their operations into Sharia compliant banking services because of the demand from the market.
Let's hone in on one issue, specifically when it comes to whether it's Mizan or any sort of bank international, any Islamic financial institution. Again, coming back to the issue of home ownership, right? What are the different models of, the facilitation of home ownership in Islam, or in our context anyway, right? And this is a specific question that we received. There's a lot of names that get dropped. What are the main models through which people can today end up owning a home in terms of what the products are available that in the Australian market anyway? So Sheikh Yusuf, tell us a little bit about that. And obviously ijara, musharaka, tell us about what they are, and we'll quickly go through them for the benefit of our brothers and sisters.
Yep. Can I just add
Yeah, of course.
So it's sorry, I just wanted to add, Brother Farhan raised a really interesting point, because we actually have non-Muslim solicitors, compliance consultants, all that. When they actually look at our model, they're like, oh wow, this is actually very good and fair. And we're like, that's what we're telling everyone, when people see that model, it's actually really good, right? So leading on to the models, there's in our community anyway, there's two major types, right? There's rent to own, and then there is the diminishing partnership, and the words in itself sort of might give a bit of clues of what they mean. So diminishing partnership is two partners essentially. I'll try to put in 1 minute. Two partners get together, they buy a property, and one partner rents their portion out to the other member. They slowly sell it to the other person. Right.
One share increases, one share decreases.
Yeah, one share increases, one share decreases, and then and then the one party's rental share also eventually decreases until one party owns the entire house. Rent to own is basically, you get into an agreement where you're renting a house for an entire term, and then at the end of the term, the house is gifted or given to you if you fulfill your agreements in that term.
For the absolute, just for the benefit of our brothers and sisters. So ICFAL, which is the organisation that you're involved with, that is based on the Musharaka Mutanaqisa concept, which is the diminishing partnership, right? So as one goes down, the other goes up. And then in our community, and not, we're dropping names here not because we're saying anything is right or wrong per se, although we'll dive into all of those. Which the rent to own concept, which institutions, Islamic institutions, in our community would offer that sort of product?
Oh look, offering our particular product, I think it's probably us and maybe another firm. That offers a pure sort of diminishing partnership, from what I know. But most other firms, Islamic finance organizations, offer the rent to own. They call it, some might have different names, but essentially how you can tell is the equity is fixed, and then the equity is slowly decreasing. If you look at the schedule, it's like an amortization. So that's how you can tell. It's sort of normally most of the other organizations offer that product, rent to own project, because it's the Musharaka model. It's actually it's a more technical model to operate.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially if you want to start pushing the boundaries, which
right.
inshallah we
of contract law,
of contract law, making sure that it's fair for both parties, meaning not only for the person taking the finance, but for the investors as well, where it's really a ta'awun, like it's really a cooperative community thing where, hey, look, brother Faraz is benefiting, but also the brother or sister who's investing their money, they're also benefiting as well. So it's more technical. It's less just when you think about how they work. The rent to own model is easier. If it's easier.
And so we're talking the likes of the other institutions in our community, MCCA. I think there is an organisation called Ijara now, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Those sorts.
Amana, those sorts. And you can just tell. Look, normally they say rent to own or ijara, or it's quite specific. So it's either diminishing partnership or it's either rent to own. You might play around with the names, but then you can sort of get the gist of it through understanding those two key concepts of differences, giving them a call, and asking them about the details of what's on offer.
No, maybe brother, just to add one point to it. We need to understand the fundamental difference between the model of a conventional financial institution and Islamic, because
I was going to come to this next.
because this is the basic question.
Actually, so how are these two models different from a conventional home loan?
Okay, we need to understand the modality of a conventional financial institution. Let's say a bank. The basic objective of a bank is to channelize the money, whereby on one hand they accept deposits from the depositors or the investors.
I put my savings there.
And on the other hand, they give it to the deserving or the one who requires fund money, right? Conventional bank has got just two products. That is, one, they tend to borrow money from the depositors at the least possible rate, and on the other hand, they tend to lend the money to the borrowers at the maximum possible rate with whatever the name or package that they can offer, with the name of consumer finance, corporate finance, bridge finance, project finance, or any other secured, unsecured loans or things like that. But the underlying product is, on one hand, it is borrowing on the basis of interest, which is clear riba, and on the other hand, it's the lending on interest, which is clearly on the basis of riba. And the difference in the rates is the banking spread, that is the core banking return that a financial institution earns, right? Now, the concept of this channelization of money is absolutely halal, right? It means taking the money from somebody who is keeping it for investments, for safe custody, for cash management, or for any other purpose is absolutely jais. On the other hand, somebody, if it's a business opportunity or maybe for other reasons, which is, Sharia compliant, making a financing, making investment in that project is absolutely halal. But the way it is being done, both sides, that is important. So how Islamic financial institutions work? Now, on one hand, when they accept deposit, usually they're being done in one of the three ways. First one is a partnership called musharaka, whereby both the partners invest in various projects like depositors and the bank itself. It's called musharaka, whereby they invest in a Sharia compliant modes. Whatever return they get, they tend to share it with them at a pre-agreed profit sharing ratio, not the rate, ratio. Now, on the other hand, there is another kind of partnership which is called mudaraba, whereby the depositors are the investing partners, the bank is the partner investing its skills and expertise in making investments, and whatever return they get, they share it in a pre-agreed profit sharing ratio. The third option is on the basis of wakala, whereby the bank acts as an agent, investment agent, on behalf of investors, invest the money, whatever returns comes out, gives to them and charges an agency fee. But on the other hand, the investment sides, there are mainly three options, rather four options. The three main options include, one is they invest these funds in trading activities, whereby, for instance, if there is any manufacturing concerns required a working capital finance for producing raw material, Islamic financial institutions, with the money they have through depositors, they purchase those raw material themselves, add a profit to it, and then sell it to the concern. Now, the end result and objective is achieved not by lending the money on interest, but by selling those products at a profit. The profit may be similar. So it can, now people need to understand why there is a similarity in the market. Why? The second option is, if there is a long-term financing requirement for, let's say, plant, machinery, equipment, car, trucks, or anything, they take the deposits out of depositors' money, purchase that asset and give it on rent, a Sharia compliant rental agreement. The third option is to go into a partnership, musharaka. And the fourth one is a hybrid product which has a combination like musharaka mutanaqisa. It is a hybrid product whereby a partnership is created, then a rental ijara agreement is there, and then a subsequent sale purchase takes place. So it's called a hybrid product. Now people need to understand why there is a correlation between the pricing of Islamic financial products with the conventional products. The reason is that we need to understand the difference in concept of an economic system versus a banking system. In the overall economic system, during the short or medium term, the supply of the money is constant, whereby not all the depositors are, there in any Islamic financial institution because of their religious beliefs. Some of them are, but the majority are due to good returns, good customer services, good product offerings, balance in the risk, right? So now, whenever they have expectations of getting good results out of the investments made by Islamic financial institutions. Now, if the interest or benchmark rates goes up in the market, usually it means on both ends of the financial institution the rates go up. That is on the acceptance or deposit side as well as on the financing side. Now same is the case with Islamic financial institutions, whereby the depositors have now started expecting higher returns on their investments. Now we need to understand
because they're comparing between Islamic and conventional.
Absolutely. Now we need to understand that whatever we are earning, we are sharing with the actual earnings, and these earnings are from these three options, that is trading, rental, or partnerships. Now in order to generate higher returns for my depositors, I need to increase the rentals or the profit sharing ratios in the partnership, but we cannot change the price that we have already established for the previous transactions, but for the new transactions,
already written, it's set in stone.
So that is the reason why usually whenever we come across with the difference in prices, or whenever in the overall economy the interest or benchmark rate increases, the Islamic financial institutions tend to increase their rates as well. That is the reason, because we are living in an economy whereby we have to create a balance in our balance sheet as well, on both sides of the balance sheet.
So, and this goes to a question that a lot of people ask. Let's take the ijara model, right? Let's take the ijara mutahiyya bit-tamlik model, which is the rent to buy model, right? So one of the very common questions we've received is, I noticed that firstly, let's ask this question, right? Let me ask you, Sheikh Yusuf, because you're closer to the Australian market. You talked before about the source of money being an important consideration, right? Are some Australian financial institutions, is their source of money other than the pooling concept which you see in the likes of ICFAD? What is the source of money in the case of some institutions in the market?
Yeah, so that would take from your conventional organizations, right? Your conventional finance organizations, that's the source. Right?
And then is that a markup that's being applied on top of that in terms of interest rates?
It's a beautiful segue for Brother Farhan just said, right? So there's an agreement between sort of the broker organizations. Okay. They take a commission for financing these Islamic finance contracts to the end consumer. Right. It's a very interesting, ideally that's the model we want to get to, where we have a bank, depositors come in, we're financing people, and then we transfer those profits back. But in lieu of that, funds have been coming from your typical conventional finance organizations, okay, and then the contracts itself is changed to then finance to the consumer, and that's where all the contention comes in. Then people, smart, curious, if you look at the Islamic finance market, 60-70% of that is under the age of 44. Like, they're all young, and they're smart, they're intelligent, they're curious. They're not just they're gonna ask that question. Okay, why, right? So that's why. It's because these funds come from conventional organizations. There's a certain return that they're expecting, and a conventional organization then takes their funds from either from deposits or from the market. Right? And then the intermediary, they make the cut. So then when rates go up, then this naturally gets transferred to the the end finance user. So you'll find that if RBA banks end up increasing their rates for the last 10 months, unfortunately, some individuals are having their rental rates increase, right?
Yeah.
And maybe the halal and haram, or like not halal, the detail of that can maybe be discussed another time. We can, because that gets quite interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Because the next question is, okay, if they start getting, I don't feel too comfortable with this product, what do I do? Is it haram? No, it's not haram. They took that product on the basis of a certain organization, they trust in the organization and the scholars. So it doesn't make their product, they can't step back and all of a sudden say they feel haram. But if they feel uncomfortable with it, that's maybe a good thing. They want to start asking questions, and they speak to different organizations and see what other options are out there that fit their understanding of what Islamic finance should be.
But even these organizations, they've got their scholars boards, they've got their they've got their sort of sharia and fiqh backing.
That's right.
Just to add one thing to it, brother, being advisor to various other institutions across the globe. I mean, from Australia till the US and Canada, I have the experience of advising to various other institutions as well, and this is not something unusual even in the Muslim countries, whereby unfortunately the major size or the biggest size of the portion in any economy or financial system is based on interest. Even in that economy, that's how the financial institutions work, whereby whenever they're short of funds, they have to get these funds from any other institution. In case if the size of the conventional financial institutions are larger, they have the muscle to support or manage the liquidity, or support the liquidity management of Islamic financial institution. Now, having said this, let me tell you that, on one hand, these institutions though they have their Sharia board, the Sharia board gives pronouncements on fatwa, but whenever you see or read that fatwa in detail, it's only going to certify the client side product and not the acceptance of funds on interest as a Sharia compliant, right? So having said this, the client needs to, or a consumer needs to, review these products and fatwa in detail, not just a stamp and a, name of the Sheikh and say, okay, he has given a fatwa that as everything is halal. No, it's related to the product that you are getting only. But for the institution, I have a message to say, there are alternates to, even if you are accepting funds from a conventional financial institution, there are ways whereby you can accept these funds in a Sharia compliant manner. It's just like I have a shop selling halal products, even a non-believer, non-Muslim can purchase these products from me, as long as it is fulfilling his requirements. So as far as, relationship between a conventional Islamic financial institutions can be made in a Sharia compliant manner, acceptable to both institutions, we have practice. Even that is the reason, one of the reasons why even in London, we have London Metal Exchange, whereby the dealings are being done, majority of them in a Sharia compliant manner. Why is that? Why the commodity barabar transactions are being done in a Sharia compliant manner? Why the module of sukuk transactions are being done? Usually these are being done with conventional institutions, but for financing Islamic financial institutions, but they're being done in a Sharia compliant manner. So as a consumer, it is always better to have dealing with those institutions having both sides of the balance sheet managed in a Sharia compliant manner. And the reason for that is that, that shows the commitment of the management of the institution towards Sharia compliance, which is the key. Right? For instance, if there is an owner of a restaurant suggesting that I am offering halal food, but I am least interested in knowing whatever I am eating myself or drinking myself, then that shows the commitment of myself towards ensuring Sharia compliance and my offerings as well. So we need to make sure that as a consumer, we evaluate the commitment of the management of that institution in ensuring Sharia compliance, and there are ways to it, which includes the sources of funds, both sides of the balance sheet, the pronouncement of the Sharia board, the commitment of the staff and the management team of the company, and so on.
So you're talking about, I mean, I would find it challenging to believe that scholars are signing off without having any. I mean, what, do they have no visibility on the wholesale finance side? Do they not look at the funding side at all? Do they ignore it? Or are they giving some sort of like, this is the best that we've got right now? So I
don't think so. To be honest with you, I don't think so. They are going a sweeping fatwa. They will be issuing a fatwa just on the offering products. That is the consumer, the product that consumer is getting, and not on the arrangements of that institution with the conventional bank, which is interest based.
That's a great point, right? That's why we really enjoy working with Mizan, because it's about, look, Sharia compliance is a holistic. It's not a certificate on a contract. See you later.
Yeah.
You know, it's
about the life cycle of the.
That's right. Like, and we were just speaking the other day. Like, we are customizing global systems to ensure we can actually run our product in a Sharia compliant manner. And there's so many processes that need to go in there to offer our product anyway. Like, we put so much work and effort in developing this IP and intellectual property over so many years, developing this, and not only that, you know, it's the simple things about, okay, it's Jum'ah time. I tell the brothers, please go Jum'ah. What are you doing? What are you working for? Like, just really, it's about the culture. It's a culture of Sharia compliance as well. And it's not just, is this certificate? And the litmus test, if brothers and sisters want to know, how do I know where my funds are coming from? Just look on your certificate of title, okay, and see who has the mortgage of your property, right? Because, or on your contract to see who is the organization that is actually giving you the money. It's available on the contracts. Is it that specific organization you're dealing with, or is it another organization? And I want to be clear, I'm not making a point here. I'm saying other products are halal and haram. I'm not giving a fatwa here. I'm just saying that there are ways people can investigate. It's great that they are thinking, they have that curiosity, that they want to challenge. It's excellent, and they should ask these questions to their organizations and go deeper. And if they can't answer them, then why not? Why can't the front staff answer basic questions about the Sharia compliance and the model and how it works? Why not? What, you know, so those are great questions that they should then bring back, right? And understandably, right, as myself as well, you know, when I went to ask organizations certain questions, some of them were very shallow. I wasn't satisfied with that, and then that led on to, you know, other things and so forth. So that's the litmus test. The customers can see it themselves where their funds are coming from.
No, very, very important. And as I said, I think, you know, we've already sort of run out of time, but there's so much to discuss, and there's so much detail we could go into. So I guess just staying on the rent to buy for a second, right? So what you're saying, Sheikh, is the reason that the payments go up is because when the interest rate goes up, that has to be passed on to customers. Is that what you're essentially saying? Is that what's going on in those?
You know, we're even hearing like some people are actually getting letters. The reason why your rates are going up is because of the increase in interest rates from the RBA.
Right. Okay.
I mean, that's sort of the reasons that are given. To people. Right. And community members, rightly so, are challenging. Well, you know, and then they can. It's up to the organisation. Then they should be able to be answerable for the fiqh and why. If they're relying on certain opinions, then the organisation should be able to answer those. And that's, you know, that's another conversation. I think
it is, and I think that's
Islamic finance a sham. Like, well, that's an excellent. Why is it that in the first place? It's because the education isn't there. People want to put certificates in.
And it certainly is a good discussion to have as a follow-up. I think that there's a lot of detail to be dug into here. And I think that's what I would say to everyone who's following today is that, you know, as we sort of thought, it's a big topic. So there'll definitely be a part 2 with this very topic. And we'll try and bring on organizations from the community where representatives may be willing to answer some of those questions. And I think they definitely, especially with in mind the fact that there are very qualified Islamic scholars who often will certify some of these products. It's a good discussion to have as to what's the logic and thinking behind that. So absolutely, we will do that. I just want to touch on one very, very quick topic, and you know, I just want to call out to the brothers and sisters that there's a bunch of topics that we weren't able to get through today. So some people asked about AOFI, right? The standards. What are these opaque AOFI things, like this thing that gets chucked around? You know, what exactly is that? So there's some people interested in that. There's people interested in investments, right? How can I invest my money as a Muslim, right? There's people who are talking about how there's a lot more to Islamic finance and achieving it properly. it's a deep thing. It's about public good. It's about recognizing the establishing of that profit maximization is not necessarily the core of the Islamic worldview. So there's a lot of these things which are fantastic, amazing things to be discussing.
Yeah.
But let me just ask one question. In fact, I've had a comment from a brother, Jazakallah khair, for the brother who's commenting. He said regarding the links to the interest rates, they say, meaning some of the institutions in the community, in the market, they say it's to keep their investment funds competitive. So it's to keep the investment fund side of their business competitive. So what they're essentially not dissimilar to what you said, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I meant.
Now, if that's genuinely the case, and if that's genuinely what's happening, is that a problem?
No, it's a misconception actually.
So for instance, just for the benefit of our brothers and sisters, and so they can follow the logic, it's to make this point. Brother Farhan was saying before that there are two sides, right? There's the borrowers, the depositors, right? Yeah. People like me and you who might put some savings into the bank account, and then those savings are lent out to people who might have a use for them, such as a home loan, right? Yeah. That's in the conventional finance world. What we're saying with Islamic financial institutions is similarly, there will be people who are depositing money with that institution because it has an investment fund, for example, which grows their wealth, right? And then they've got people who are doing the ijara,
the user of those funds.
The user of those funds. And so because these Islamic institutions want to keep people in this system and not have them migrate their money to conventional banks, they're doing the same thing. They're using the interest rate as a bit of a benchmark to say, if we don't provide our investors this much return, they won't keep their money here.
Yes, absolutely correct.
If that's the argument, then is that a legitimate argument?
Yes, of course. Yeah. Because, in an economy whereby, as I mentioned earlier, not all are faith-based depositors or customers. Some are because of some other reasons. And of course, you have to create a balance on your balance sheet, on both sides of the balance sheet, which means the one is the asset and investment or financing side, and on the other hand, you have depositors, these are the liabilities for the institution. So you have to create balance. Consider a situation whereby you have, let's say, $100,000 as a deposit, and you have invested $100,000 in financing transactions through trade, rental, or partnership. Now, in case if there is an increase in the interest rate in the conventional market, and some of your depositors, maybe let's say 30%, if they withdraws your fund and ask for a withdrawal, that because you are paying lesser returns, I need to invest my funds in a conventional because I am indifferent, let's say. In that case, how you are going to create a balance between this $100,000 investment with $70,000 deposit?
Yes.
You need to accept funds now, either from a conventional bank, you need to place these funds through equity, or maybe consider a situation whereby this is $100 million or $300 million. So things like that. So you have to create a balance. So in order to create that balance in an economy, because Islam do acknowledge and recognize the market forces on demand and supply, and the pricing on the basis of the market forces.
And in and of itself, using the interest rate as a benchmark, because the reality is that people can take their funds elsewhere, is not in and of itself haram.
Yes, of course. That's the scholarship, because it's just a benchmark. It's a reference rate. It's about taking a reference rate for doing a Sharia compliant and halal transaction. I'm just taking the reference rate for marking my profit, but in essence, I'm not it's not about the reference rate. It's about the actual transaction, whether I'm lending money on interest or borrowing money. No, if I'm investing this money through a trade transaction, then absolutely, if all the requirements of Sharia related to buy, that is sale, is are followed, then absolutely it's a Sharia compliant trade transaction, and the profit is jaiz, even if it's exactly equal to a conventional investment or returns.
Got it. Right? Exactly. Okay.
I think I would add though. I think I might have. I think I have a slightly different view
on the benchmarking issue.
No, that's number two. So number one, in regards to that question about the reason why our rates are increases because we need to provide our investors with more money. Why? My question is why? Why do we need to do that? I mean, one, we can argue, look, yes, it's because we live in such a society, but that's going back to your question about
the worldview. Yeah,
that's right. That's why people get suspicious. Well, you're just trying to make yourselves like them. Right? That's why. Maybe that's why.
So you would say
with me, right? I have radical, crazy ideas.
No. Right? I think that's fantastic. Yeah.
Why do we need to follow them? Yeah. My proposition is, I want to create an Islamic finance movement. Yeah. You're joining us because you're coming.
Tell your investors, hold your horses, right? Stay with us.
Sabr. Stay with
yeah.
us.
Yeah.
Because it's a communal thing.
Yeah.
I tell brothers, it's a communal thing. There are sometimes you may get more, there are sometimes you may get less, but hey, we're holding hands, we're walking together as a community. We see the greater good. We're creating an independent financial system where we can stick it up and say, look at our system. It's actually better. Look at our system. It's making you jealous, isn't it? You're on these variable rates and our customers are on this, you know.
Let me play devil's advocate. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Just because I want to push you, right? Sounds good
please.
in the sense that let's build our own movement. Let's tell people, think of the Islamic worldview, right? Don't pull your money. Just stick with us. Help us make it easier for brothers and sisters on the other side, right? So if you've got the funds to be able to invest, essentially what you're saying is, what you'd be saying to these people is, if you've got the funds to be able to invest, you're helping other people get a home in some way, shape or form, right? And that's actually part of the, at least when I was an ICFAL member, that was part of the proposition. It was that it's not just about you. You're putting your money in there to help Muslims own their homes. Once upon a time, it might have been you. Now it's other people, right? So there's more than just money and investment and return. You're actually creating a harmonious community where people are self-sufficient, creates more wealth circulation and so on and so forth. So I get that argument. But what if someone was to say, and I'm just playing devil's advocate, and that's the real talk that we like to engage in.
We're just starting now.
Just getting on. If you don't increase your rates, you'll lose investors, which in turn will mean that you won't be able to provide those funds to begin with. Could it put you into an existential crisis of the very reason that you were created as an organization? What would you say about that?
Look, there are many other ways to actually make a profit for business. You know, you can look at looking at other products. It's not just purely about there's this rate, we need to keep it with the market, right? It's about let's do this root cause analysis. Can we make profits in other ways? You know, can we work more efficiently as an organization? And yeah, sure, I'm sure like there are people out there saying, look, I've lost the plot, right? You know, but maybe that's why the ICFAL board puts up with me, you know, a bit radical in my ideas. But look, there are many ways to make money. We're speaking about Islam. Look, are we Muslim? Are we a community? We're not asking people for sadaqah. We're asking people to, hey, let's really put our system separate and make it and differentiate it in such a way. And yeah, look, I get you know, a lot of I get most Muslims, they just want returns and stuff, but hey, there's going to come a time where they're going to benefit. They're going to see the great. It's about this greater cause, this communal aspect, and it's different. That's maybe that's why you don't get enough resources. Maybe that's not as many people as altruistic as us sitting here. But you know, that's number one, right? And number two, regarding the AOFI, they are base benchmarks, meaning that these are the borders which you can operate in, right? This is the AOFI guidelines. It does not mean that you have to operate right at the border of these baselines, right? You can take these AOFI rules and improve, work within them. There are better ways of doing it. You don't need to, for example, I know this is going to open a can of worms, but if you're speaking about investing in stocks and shares, there's certain AOFI rules that has that. But you don't need to go all the way to the border, right at the limit of these baseline, because AOFI rules are basically their baseline. They're saying, okay, here's the rule. If you go beyond this, it's not permissible. Within this, it's permissible. Yeah. So even within those rules, and those are not there's not ijma', it's not consensus of the scholars. If you look at those rules, scholars do differentiate. Some scholars actually say, yeah, look, you can't peg it to the market rate because there is uncertainty. That's what some scholars, I'm giving the opinions, right? And that's part of the education project. You can't just, these are the rules, these are the golden rules, we're going to push that down your throat. But it's not Quran. You know, there's differences of opinion, but these are the rules that we can work by. And can we do things better? Yes, you can. That's just the boundaries which you can work in. But you know, that's sort of, you know, maybe a real talk for another time.
No, absolutely. And look, sorry.
Yeah, brother. While fully respecting your point of view,
of course, this is real talk.
But you know, having experience of maybe approximately 25 years of banking in a Sharia compliant manner, you know, you have to have substantial size in the economy to be able to have a say in the market. For instance, just consider yourself that you're limited to just very few members who are faith-based investors. They're bearing the cost of being Muslim. They're getting lesser returns as they're Sharia-minded investors, and you have a very limited size. Now consider your situation whereby you have been in the market for, let's say, many years, 10, 15, 20, 25 years, and you have a very less size as compared to the other market players. Now consider sitting in a position of a regulator or a decision maker in the industry and say, okay, whatever their demands are, maybe they're very good, but look at their size, right? In order to have a system, alhamdulillah, right now, based on experience, I can safely say the reason, because this is not a fiqh issue. I mean, the fiqh issue is whether we can use the benchmark for pricing our products or not. That is it. That is it. Now, if we can use it, yes. Right, if we can use it for pricing our products, no, there is no point. Let us leave it to the practitioners to evaluate the market situation. Let us leave it to the economists to decide what kind of money supply they are expecting in the near future. Right now, what is happening in the economy, and in order to have a stable financial institution, because you don't want to lose their money, because in certain times whereby you have lots of demands of the product, but you don't have sufficient fund to fulfill the requirements. What is the use of having such Sharia compliant financial institution if you don't have the funding to finance those projects that are in queue? So on the other hand, you need to be market competitive for investors as well, whereby you have access investors in queue to invest, getting more competitive and better returns as compared to conventional financial institutions, and on the other hand, getting rewards, inshallah, in the hereafter as well. So as a practitioner now, being among the top 5 banks in the country, we have, alhamdulillah, we have a say. We have a very strong say in the market. I mean, the regulatory, even from global donor and lending institutions like IMF and World Bank, they have classified as systematically important institution, a Sharia compliant institution, fully Sharia compliant institution, as a systematically important bank in an economy. That is what your size, your profitability, your business can do. So my take on this point of view is that our investors should get the best return out of the market while being Sharia compliant. That's what they deserve for being a Sharia compliant investor. And on the other hand, those brothers and sisters who are interested in taking there, okay, there should be market competitive products offering for them, and there should be, whatever is happening in the market, but they should have equal opportunity, equal options, with a better service, with a better risk sharing products that are fulfilling their financial requirements. As far as AOF is concerned, it's a global institution, accounting and auditing organization for Islamic financial institutions, developing various kind of standards that include Sharia standards. They have accounting and auditing standards. They have governance standards. So they have issued these 4 kinds of standards in detail about nearly all the products and services offerings that any Islamic financial institution has to offer. Alhamdulillah, I have the privilege of working and part of leading a team that has developed the Internal Sharia Audit Standard for the AOF. So alhamdulillah, across the globe, it is widely being accepted. They have a specific Sharia supervisory board leading the Sharia standards, and approving them. It has got nearly representation from all school of thoughts, Sharia scholars having understanding and detailed knowledge of the economics, finance and banking. So alhamdulillah, it is
you're talking the traditional madhabs, you mean Hanafi, Shafi? Everyone has to say. So alhamdulillah, I mean, the standards are widely accepted, and they are a very good reference or benchmark for Islamic financial institutions to follow.
Look, it's a good
it is a deep topic for another time.
It's not about it's about being different to the market, not necessarily having less returns over the long run.
Sure. Okay. So it's a different logic behind why they're making
my question is, why do we need to?
Sure. And look, it's a very provocative question. It's a good question, right? Definitely a very real question. So, I mean, look, there are a few other things to delve into on this particular topic. As I said, there'll definitely be a part 2. But, when we raise the question of fiqh and madhahib, obviously there's questions of talfiq, taking and picking from here to the point that you might get a Frankenstein, that the limb look like something else, the leg look. So there's those questions that it raises, but that's way beyond the province of this first episode. I think we'll definitely have another one. And we didn't even get into the investing side. You know what? Elevator pitch question. I'm going to give you only 60 seconds each. Rattle it off. What are the investment options? And maybe Sheikh Yusuf yourself, because you're closer to this market. What are the investment options for Muslims living in Australia?
It's always
Just define them.
Okay, no. I'm going to give a rule
Yeah.
rather than the option. It depends. I always tell brothers and sisters, it's a Sharia compliance spectrum. Where do you want to sit on that? And depending where you sit on that, there are options available.
Right.
For some people, there's never going to be nothing available.
Yep.
For other people, there's many options available. So it's about that.
Say I'm a reasonably practicing Muslim. I care about my deen, but I understand I have limitation of knowledge in this area. I can't investigate everything and know everything. I will defer to scholars who I trust. And the ones I trust, they fear Allah. They know that they've got degrees in Islamic finance. They're not selling out to some bank or whatever. That sort of. Say I'm that sort of person. Let's just say. Yeah. What sort of? And I'm not talking about specific products or companies. I'm talking classes of investment products. Yeah. Can I invest in shares? Does it depend on the industry in question? What would you say?
Sure. Okay. Yeah. Look, there are options out there if you're going just by general globally accepted AOFE type principles. There are options in managed funds in shares. Okay. The options in residential financing, right? In commercial financing. There's all of different type of funds out there that you can investigate and look at to see. If you're comfortable with their Sharia compliant, then there are organizations out there that provide that, right? And then you can determine whether you're personally comfortable with that, And I'm always encouraging this curiosity, ask the questions and spread the knowledge and be knowledgeable about what you're investing into. But at the end of the day, I find that in my experience anyway, it's the Sharia compliance spectrum. Yeah. That it's where you sit.
So it's like your appetite for. It's almost like your appetite for. Appetite. Appetite for risk and compliance. Risk. Compliance. Yeah. I didn't hear you say cryptocurrency, the pokey machines.
You want to say that? Cryptocurrency.
Don't open up that can of worms. I know that's a big one for another time. But look, to both of you, brothers, Jazakumullah khair. I mean, we didn't even get through half the questions, and there was more coming in. I think there will definitely be a part 2. I'm not sure, brother, if we'll have you there for that one, because you're flying out this week.
The coming week, inshallah.
But inshallah, Sheikh Yusuf, there'll be some others that I want to get on in Ramadan, most likely.
Maybe this investment area is my area of research.
Yeah,
actually.
please.
Please open it up. No way. Well, tell us.
Actually, I was thinking of how do I'll compare this question with the question that if I want to play a sport, how can I play a sport, any sport, and answer this question in 60 seconds? There can be many sports. So investing is depending upon your risk appetite, how you're going to invest. For a Muslim investor in economies like Australia, I would highly recommend that you need to understand your risk appetite first. If you're relatively young.
What if I said my Sharia risk appetite instead?
No.
How much risk am I willing to take with my deen in terms of non-conventional question?
Okay, right? I mean, of course, in this regard, you're in no position to take even 1% risk with that. Because either you're Muslim or Sharia compliant, you're not. You can't say I'm 90% Muslim. Okay, right? Good. If you're 100% Muslim, you need to be 100% Sharia compliant in everything that you do. Right? You can't say that I'm having 90% halal food and 10% non-halal food together, right? Because majority is halal, so the overall we'll consider it halal. No, we can't say that. So as far as investments are concerned, we have options like investing in products like in platforms like Iqbal. On the other hand, we have stock exchange whereby there are companies who are Sharia compliant, but you need to evaluate that on the basis of Sharia screening criteria. There are certain institutions that offer screening of those scripts who are available.
But it is possible, in your view, shares can be bought.
Absolutely.
You don't hold to the opinion that because of the structure of the economy or the way that the modern company is structured, that's a problem from a Sharia perspective.
By no means it is allowed under Sharia, because by purchasing a share of any company, it means becoming a partner. It means doing a musharaka in any particular company. If the company is doing the right business, halal business, there is no harm. Rather, it's something that is being highly liked. Creating musharakas, creating partnerships. On the other hand, as a community, what I recommend and suggest as a student of economics, to invest in startups, make a small investment in various projects within community to strengthen, create entrepreneurs within our community. We need to create businesses, because creating businesses means creating employment, creating wealth. That can be used for the benefit of the ummah and the community. So from that perspective, I believe we should provide, or we should have a platform whereby the young generation come up with new ideas. They look for crowdfunding, they look for
incubating ideas, basically.
Yes, absolutely. And from that perspective, usually whenever we create such kind of incubators, we need to inculcate this in their mind that whatever you've started, you should start it with this thing in mind, that this business will be 100% Sharia compliant, inshallah. And the sources of finance should be Sharia compliant, and the investors should bear this in mind, that they are investing in a Sharia compliant business. So from that perspective, the first thing that you'll get before profit would be the barakah, inshallah. So I believe there are various investment opportunities everywhere in every economy. It's just that we need to identify, have experts in place, create a platform for that, provide opportunity to the investors, and bring them together at a platform.
Neither of you said property. Neither of you said.
Yeah, we can.
Property finance. Okay,
yes,
property finance.
We can.
I thought you pooled sort of property fund.
Yeah. But usually investing in property, it has got various segments to it. Generally it's called real estate investments. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Why it's called real estate? Because there are certain buying of lands and plots, things like that. Buying just the houses or the apartments, or creating or adding value to those lands. If it's creating value to those lands, it means you're creating value to the economy, adding value to the economy, because with the construction industry taking place, a construction project, it usually involves approximately 30 to 40 other industries as well. So if these kind of investments are taking place, it's going to, give a positive impact for the economy as well. But as far as, buying a plot, waiting for capital gain, and after a while, creating an artificial, inflation in the prices, this is something I personally feel it will not be a good, good for the economy of the country as well.
Might be good for individuals, but not.
But yeah, but of course, it's a Sharia compliant investment avenue. In any case.
No, fantastic. I'm glad we got to ask that question, because some people were very much asking that. I mean, look, there's some contentions about the share market that I think are beyond the province of today's discussion, but would definitely love to dive into, and only because we're hearing some of our viewers. I'm getting messages privately saying we should push the point on the share market. So I think we won't cover everything today.
They can. I mean, if they want to, being part of the board member of the recomposition committee of the 2 Islamic indices at Pakistan Stock Exchange. I'm a founding member of that. So it's my area of developing Islamic indices. I was part of the team that developed 2 indices in Pakistan. Alhamdulillah. I mean, it can be established in Australian stock market as well.
Any index can, technically.
Yeah, we can create that. There are certain criteria to it. We can do that. I mean, if somebody is interested, we are willing to share our experience with them as well. So we can have, Muslims can invest in those Sharia compliant indices, and they can, get the opportunity and benefit out of the stocks market.
Is there some of the indices on the New York Stock Exchange, would you say they are Sharia compliant?
Yes, of course they are.
Yeah.
Yes, they are.
I think Vanguard has an Islamic. Is it Vanguard that has a Sharia compliant?
Many institutions are offering. They have their own set of scripts. Yeah. But of course they are certified. They are Sharia compliant, and one can, of course, I cannot take the names. Of course, it will be a marketing of those.
Sure.
So,
That's my job. No, but fair enough. I think. Look, there are some deeper questions on that one, which we'll definitely ask at some point. But look, absolutely fascinating discussion, brothers. Jazakumullah khair to you both. Very much only scratching the surface, and that's the point I would stress to people watching. That inshallah we do plan to go deeper. We will double down on this topic and have a part 2 at some point in the next probably month or so during Ramadan, and we'll bring Sheikh Yusuf on with, we'll see if we can get someone else on from one of the institutions in the community that might be interested in this discussion, having heard what we've had to say. But great discussion. Great to see some of the disagreement between you guys as well. And brother, maybe we'll do a live stream discussion involving you in Pakistan one day.
I would love to.
Because I don't think it's the end of the discussion by any means. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Really appreciate both of you being on. Jazakumullah khair. So brothers and sisters, thank you so much for joining us for this great episode. There was a few questions that we weren't able to get to. Thank you to Brother Hadi, who sent a long and beautiful message of thanks for the episode. Brother Fadlullah, we weren't able to ask your question, but I tried to weave the essence of it in. To many other brothers, such as Ramzi, Razil, we were able to get to your question, which was great. Tried to get through as many as we could, but there was some good excitement about tonight's episode. So thank you so much once again. Jazakumullah khair. We look forward to, brothers and sisters, to being back with you in approximately 1.5 weeks' time with our next episode, which, as it happens, is with another big name in the Islamic finance sphere, Brother Talal Hussein, who needs very little introduction to the Muslim community. I will do justice to his introduction at the start of that episode. The coverage of which and the topics of which we will release at a later date. It's a Talal first episode, topic second, because he has a very close tie to NZF, but we look forward very much to exploring some very juicy topics and making it yet another real talk, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair for your presence, and we look forward to you tuning in next time. Subhanak Allahumma wa bihamdik, wa nashhadu wa la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk, wal asr inna al-insana lafi khusr illa alladhina amanu wa amilu as-salihat wa tawasaw bil haqqi wa tawasaw bis sabr. Assalamu alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.